Hello, everyone. Welcome to It's Sybil. I am Sybil Wilkes, and it is our Coy Malone Day. Welcome in, Coy. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, Sybil?
Doing fine. I am very excited. One of my favorite people, one of our favorite guests, is attorney CK Hoffler. She's going to join us today, and I always love just to sit and listen to her because she's just a font of information. And so, stay tuned for that. And other than that, it's been a beautiful day, a cool day in Dallas Fort Worth. How about you there in Atlanta?
Yeah, same here. So really sunny and looks like spring, but feels like winter or fall. Really
Yeah,
breezy, really cool.
yeah. It might have gotten to about 60 here, but it was for the most part been in the 50s, and I think it's going to be that way. We had a lot of rain this weekend, so there's your weather report.
Yeah, we didn't really get so much. It was projected to rain all weekend. And I think we got a little bit kind of like overnight on early Sunday morning, late Saturday night. Other than that, no, not really. Not that I can recall.
Well, if it just stays like this, I won't have to turn my water on for a while, and I'm okay with that, with the sprinklers and what have you. But did you get outside and play in the cold sun?
Not really. I tried to, and it was just a little bit too breezy for me, I guess. And I this weekend I took advantage of getting rest as well. So
Oh, good, 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 good.
so yeah, I didn't really get outside like I wanted to, but it's okay.
Did you have
I will.
plans? Because a lot of people were celebrating, even though they might not be Irish. A lot of people were celebrating at the parades and eating corned beef. Well, you don't eat corned beef probably, um,
No.
but a lot of people were out there and drinking green beer, which is just beer with some green food dye in it. So if that doesn't abhor you, then there was a lot of that, and corned beef and cabbage and
No.
Irish
Mm-mm.
stew.
No. St. Patrick's Day really doesn't appeal to me. I don't think.
Well,
Well, for
that's what I'm
mine,
saying. You don't have to be, but
yeah.
people do take advantage of a lot of the imbibement and what have you.
I didn't really care. I don't really care for it. Like, I forgot about it to be honest. And then like one of my friends reminded me in the morning. I was like, oh, mm, well, okay.
Well, I have friends who look a lot like you and me, and they were not afraid to get out there and to be a part of the celebration. We call them the Black Irish. So um, that is uh, that is what they did over the weekend. I know that efforts to have a St. Patrick's Day parade in Dallas were kind of washed away. They did have something, but for the most part, they had rain in many parts of Dallas Fort Worth. So, and this was in the downtown Greenville area where they were having a big time St. Patrick's Day parade. All right, Coy. So let us talk about the What You Need to Know newsletter. This is our Monday through Friday newsletter. We'd love to have you subscribe. It is absolutely free. Please go to sybilwilkes.com. Give us your name and your email address, and we'll have it in your email box every Monday through Friday. What we do seek to do is to inform and empower people with our stories that we curate from other sources. And um, Coy, as I mentioned, is our social justice contributor. Uh, Cameron Riley is our political contributor, as well as his little sister, Quinn Townsend Riley, is our LGBTQIA plus contributor. And dear sweet Miss Aprilette Russell is our mental health and wellness contributor. So um, these are giving you young perspectives all along in these various topics that probably talk about every day in our day-to-day lives over the water cooler, if people still do that, or over a virtual water cooler, which is now social media. But Coy surprised me with a story that not only applies to Women's History Month, but Black History Month. And it was a social justice story with that didn't bring me down.
Ooh, thank goodness.
That was the greatest surprise for me. And talking about a black woman who made history within the armed services and in the early days of the armed services, like around the Civil War. So tell us your story, and I do ask people um, make note of this woman as a Black History fact as well, as I said, but also for her courage and making a stand as a woman in the Army.
Yeah, so the story is about Kathy Williams, or Cathay Williams, as it's spelled, Cathay, who was the first woman to serve in the armed forces in the 1860s. And this was just after the Civil War. And she was the first Black woman to enlist in the U.S. Army and the only documented female to serve with the Buffalo Soldiers. So this was a time when it was illegal for women to serve in the military. Women were not allowed to serve in the military until 1948. So she
Another
was
100 years later, she was
100
really
years later,
before her time.
way before her time, an innovator. She was born in 1844. So there we go, 140 years before women were allowed to serve in the military. And she was born in Independence, Missouri. And she was enslaved, even though her father was free, her mother was enslaved. So that made her enslaved as well. So she worked on a plantation in Jefferson City. And in the early 1860s, this is when the Union Army occupied the area. And at that time, they captured slaves. And what slaves did in the military at that time was served in roles such as being a cook, an aide, a nurse, or in laundry. So Williams did all of those roles. And after the Civil War ended, Congress signed to create an all-Black military unit. And she signed up under a pseudonym. She created William Cathy. So she reverse her names. And it was said she had the help of like her cousin and one of her friends that were in the military that helped her get enlisted. And she cut off her hair. And she did that because, it was illegal for women to be in the military. So she was a part of the 38th Infantry of the Buffalo Soldiers, which is an all-Black military unit that helped the westward expansion by removing Native Americans from their areas. And they also served along the railroad. And so she was assigned in the New Mexico territory and served for almost 3 years. She endured a lot, like including having to swim across the Rio Grande River at one point in time. Another time she got frostbite during winter marches. And, they weren't really clothed heavily for wintertime and conditions. So she ended up having to get her toes
Especially as a
amputated.
Black soldier, they really didn't
Yes.
give them things to
Oh
keep warm.
no. Oh
Yeah,
no. They got scraps and whatever else they could put together. So she
right.
ended up having to get her toes amputated, and she had smallpox twice. So because of all this toll on her body, that's kind of what got her away from the military. Every time she was seen by a doctor, she was able to conceal her identity as a
That's
woman.
what
But
I was going to say. When did they find? Because it was a doctor that discovered and it said, "Whoa, you're not a man." And so, did you have the time that she was discovered?
yeah, so I don't have the exact year, but she a little bit later, after like she started to kind of branch away from the military, she outed herself to a doctor. They all, thought that she was a man. She carried on that way. She outed herself. And so later she ended up moving to Pueblo, Colorado, where she married. She opened a laundry business, and so her husband stole from her. So she relocated to Trinidad, Colorado, and she tried to apply for a disability pension from the military, and she was denied 3 times. It said because of discrimination because she's Black. It didn't say anything about her being a woman. I'm sure she applied under her pseudonym. And so there are uh, two documents that note her being a Buffalo Soldier. One was an interview by the St. Louis Times reporter came to interview her and was asking people in the local area. They were like, "You need to interview this woman. She was a Buffalo Soldier." So that's the only documented story of her telling her own story. And then the
Mm-hmm.
other one is a little bit like, yeah, they kind of put it together after doing research. So there's a hospital record that popped up that showed her name, Catherine Williams, but it was scratched out, and then they rewrote it as William Cathy. And then they noted that the person had amputated toes. So these are the only written records that we have of her. And so it took a lot of research from different persons and universities to kind of get this figured out. So why this is important is because we're coming up on elections. We have some elected officials in certain areas and states that want to maintain that Black history isn't a thing. They don't want to teach it. And furthermore, they don't want certain persons feeling a certain way when we name things like slavery and what have you. So it's very important for everybody to get out there and vote and to make sure that the education that our children are getting is a full perspective and not their perspective. Because we want to
Yeah.
learn anything like this. I've never heard of this.
And so people are saying, well, how is our voting going to affect our knowledge of Black history? And it is positions like school board members and state representatives, perhaps even some local metropolitan offices, in which they determine what books are on our library shelves and what the syllabus is for our children in the classrooms. And so just think about how we were affected and the decisions that were made or not made, or made and changed as a result of a change in the officials there. And so, as Coy is efforting to tell people on a daily basis, it's not so much, and we do want you to vote for all of the offices that you of which you have knowledge and feel secure in placing your vote. But also remember that the further down the ballot, the more it has that it pertains to your day-to-day living. As Coy says, whether it's your potholes or the street lights or what your children are being allowed to read in the classroom or in the school libraries, or what their teachers are teaching them, and what is going on and going in your children's heads, really has to do with a lot of the people that we elect for these various positions. And so, do your homework and find out who the people are, what they stand for, and also continue to watch and follow Coy as she uh, gives you the information, what you need to know about the upcoming elections. I know we have a primary tomorrow in my home state of Illinois and other states, and they've got some metropolitan issues on the ballot, as well as the presidential nominations, which have already gone to former President Trump and current President Joe Biden. Did I miss anything, Coy?
Not as far as the elections. Everybody get out there. If you start looking into your local politics, I'll just encourage everybody to do that. You're gonna start to see some things come to light. One of the things I would like to point out for those of you that live in Illinois, I think the name of the city is Dalton. There is some interesting stuff going on that local level. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, that'll
Uh,
keep you entertained.
Yeah, Cameron has reported on her, and I'm anxious for an update because I keep getting word from our Illinois people on the Tuesday show that, oh, it's coming down, it's going down, and she is a very interesting mayor. Hinyard, I believe, is her name.
Yes, Tiffany
Um,
Henyard.
yeah,
Yeah,
she is a social media darling, if you will, but she is very divisive or divisive, if you care that pronunciation. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens in suburban Dalton, Illinois, and still uh, on the very south side of Chicago, outside the
yes.
suburb of Chicago. So
And I still have some stories coming up this week. They're going to be very, very interesting, delving more into local laws that affect Black women specifically and violence. So please, please sign up for our newsletter to check out my stories coming up for this Wednesday and third. No, I apologize. For this Tuesday and this
mm.
Thursday coming up. Those stories are going to be very interesting.
And if you heard us talking about Kathy Williams or Cathay Williams, you can go and look up. There are some books about her, and I knew I had one. I just can't find it, so I went to look up this and see if I still had access to some of those books online to purchase. But a fascinating story, and they made a great movie about Harriet, but I really think that this is as fascinating a story as you could possibly get. So, with that, please go to SybilWilkes.com, subscribe to our newsletter, as Koya said, and a lot of great stories to inform and empower you. And let us move to what's really going on. And this is our opportunity to welcome in our friend CK Hoffler to talk about what's going on in Atlanta. CK, how are you?
Hi, Sybil. How are you? Hi, Coy. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Hey, CK.
It's been a while. And is my
Yes.
lighting okay? I look like I'm in a hotel room, so I apologize.
Oh, no,
You
no
all
worries.
look nice
We've
and
all
bright,
been
and
there.
seem like mine is a little darker, but hey, I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. It is, and you and I caught up with each other recently at the installation of Dr. Freddie Haynes as the Rainbow Push Coalition came together in Dallas. And it was such a joy to reconnect with you. And I was like, "Where you been? What are you doing?" And I knew I know how important you are to the board, and so I had hoped to see you, but when the word came down on Friday about the Judge Stephen McAfee, and or some people call him Mc, Mc, McAfee or Mac, I can't remember. Anyway, so
McAfee or something like
McAfee, right,
that.
right. So when that came down, you're the first person that I reached out to. I was like, can you please come on and talk about this? Because, and I wrote about it for today's newsletter, but I need a perspective, first of all, as an attorney, as someone who lives in the Atlanta area, and as a Black woman in law. I think all of those things played such a part in what happened to her in the disqualification trial and the charges that were levied against her by the Donald Trump co-defendant in the election interference case and what have you. And I just wanted to kind of bring it all together from your perspective. Do you think that, were you surprised at the ruling that McAfee, or however the judge pronounces his name, were you surprised at his ruling saying, you can stay, but one of you has to go? If you go, he can stay. You can stay, District Attorney Fonnie Willis, or your special prosecutor Nathan Wade has to go.
Well, first of all, good evening. And thank you so much, Sybil, for having me here today. I was not at all surprised by the judge's ruling. I
Right.
think he reached the right conclusion insofar as allowing what I cared about and what most people cared about was ensuring that Fonnie Willis was not disqualified from the case.
Right.
Because had she been disqualified, the entire district attorney's office would have been disqualified. And I did not feel from a legal standpoint that the defendants met their burden, period, end of discussion. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I think the judge ultimately reached the right decision. I may not agree with some of the statements that the judge made
Yeah.
in his ruling, in his order, but guess what? He's the judge. And as I tell people every day, all the time, a judge, he or she rules the courtroom, and in this case, ruled the evidentiary hearing. This is an evidentiary hearing. There's no jury. It's entirely within the province of the judge to make findings and conclusions. He reached the right conclusion. Now, whether it didn't ever cross my mind that Nathan Wade would stay on the case if it were
Mm-hmm.
between him and Fonnie Willis. Please, we don't even need to discuss that. But Fonnie Willis is a very, very able, capable, determined, and serious lawyer. And she brought these claims because evidence was placed in her lap, and she felt this was the right thing to do, the appropriate thing to do on behalf of the citizens of Fulton County, who, by the way, elected her to do
Mm-hmm.
exactly what she's doing. Now, I believe, and I've said this early on in the media too, that, yeah, not the best practices. It's never a
Mm-hmm.
good practice to have a relationship with someone that you're working with. Never.
Right.
And when it happens, in my humble impression, Sybil, we were talking about women and women's empowerment. From the beginning of time, since I can remember, women are always the ones to lose in that situation.
Right.
Where a man might get a hit out, slap on the back, thumbs up, hey, attaboy, for sleeping on the job with a woman is going to be forever tarnished. It's not a good look. It's not the best practices in the workplace. Now, Nathan Wade was technically not her employee, so let me be
Right.
really clear. But he was reporting to her,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the lead special prosecutor. So even though he was not her employee, obviously, based on all the stuff that we saw, not the best practices, I think bad judgment, but there was nothing illegal about their conduct.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that's going to be the barometer, then a whole bunch of judges, a whole bunch of prosecutors, a whole bunch of lawyers, and every profession out there, none of those people will be able to practice in their field, in their trained field. Because if we're going to say that when you are, granted, it's not best practices, it's not good, it's not illegal unless you engage in discriminatory conduct in the workplace, meaning
Right.
You sexually harass someone in the workplace. You got someone reporting to you. You have an affair with her, and she feels that you create a hostile work, all that kind of stuff. None of those factors were there in this case. So there was nothing whatsoever that was illegal. I never thought there would be anything illegal. This was just a side show, a red herring to do, and they accomplished what they set out to do. I don't think in a minute that any attorney on the defense side thought that Fani Willis would be disqualified.
Right.
Yes, embarrassed. Yes, humiliated. But that it would delay this case, absolutely, and that's exactly what it did.
Right. So, and that's what he does every case that Donald Trump is involved in. It's delay, delay, delay.
Right? And that's a defense tactic. That's a defense tactic. And let me tell you, in Georgia, if he were convicted, he's going down, he's going to jail. There is no presidential pardon. There is no gubernatorial pardon. He will go to jail for racketeering under these RICO charges if convicted, and so will his co-defendants. Now, as you know, a number of them have already accepted a plea. So, and presumably when you accept a plea in a case like this, you are going to turn evidence against, presumably, the head of this alleged criminal enterprise, which would be the former president, Donald Trump. At least that's the allegation. That's the indictment. He was indicted. There was an indictment returned by a grand jury, not by Fani Willis, but a grand jury in Fulton County. So I'm not surprised. I think the judge got it right. Just to summarize, I disagree with some of his findings, but I'm not the judge. I think that there were
a little personal to you.
Well, it is personal, and I think there were cultural dynamics. But you know what, Sybil, I practice in a world where a lot of times my juries don't have any color, don't have any diversity, and there are always cultural dynamics. I mean, simply because for the three of us, we can't walk in somewhere and expect people are going to accept, embrace, and love us just because. Right. That's not how the world works.
Right. Yeah, that's what my mama told me.
That's right. We're still living in the United States of America.
Right.
So, and in the world, it just is not how the world works. Fani Willis, I think, has done a formidable job as a lawyer in terms of working up this case, putting together a team, and doing all that. And I'm not a personal friend of Fani Willis. I know her like most people in Fulton County, but I'm not a personal friend. So I'm not speaking from a position of, oh, she's my friend, she's my girl. No, it's none of that. I'm just calling it how I see it. This is a very, very, very serious case. It is, to me, of the four criminal cases, this is the most significant case that has the most significant weight, that has the most significant penalty. And so this takes it, you know, we have seen from time and time again that former President Trump, and by the way, other defendants, when you're fighting for your life,
like you said,
you're fighting for your liberty, you're going to go for broke. And if you have money, you're going to leave no stones unturned. And so that's what we're seeing. I don't want people to get confused. Yes, the allegations are strong. Yes, there's probably a plethora of evidence. And yes, it's going to be really, really a very interesting trial. And Fani Willis has taken it to this point, and she still survived. You are never, if you are a practicing lawyer, if you've been a trial lawyer, and if you've done high stakes litigation, I've done it on the civil side, you're going to have a judge or two that just doesn't like what you do, doesn't like how you do it, doesn't like how you present, and doesn't like what you said, and doesn't whatever. But thank God there's a jury. Oh my God.
Right.
And so when there's a jury, and I believe I'm someone who reveres and loves judges in general. But when I believe that a judge has gone too far, or maybe it's personal, whatever, I call it as I see it. I do legal commentary in court TV. I comment on all cases. Most of the cases I comment on don't have anything to do with Black and brown people.
Right.
So, you know, I just call it like I see it. In this case, yes, my law firm is in Fulton County. And so, you know, we all are watching this. Fani is a Black woman like I'm a Black woman. She's a Black woman lawyer like I'm a Black woman lawyer. And I think that all of us going forward, I believe if you think about Attorney General Letitia James, the case has absolutely positively done what many did not and could not do relative to former President Donald Trump in a huge way. Almost $500 million against him, billion with a B, almost $500 million. That's
And,
very
and now at the point where she's talking about, well, I can see his buildings from here, and they may be in our our cash box after a little while because he can't come up with the cash
with the cash
in
with
order
the
to get the
bond,
bond.
right? The bond money. That's very significant. Judge Tanya Chuckin, another
Oh
Black
my
woman
God, yeah.
in the District of Columbia, who is presiding over one of his cases. And then Fonnie Willis, District Attorney Fonnie Willis in Atlanta, Georgia, the District Attorney of Fulton County. All three of these women's lives have been forever altered because they are subject to
Yeah.
death threats. Their families are, I mean, it's just the unthinkable.
And and
It's
and
just
and CK, not to diminish what the two women who were over the counting of the votes and what how their lives were ruined by Donald Trump and his people. And they have been awarded a certain amount of money and a nice settlement, but the likelihood of them getting that seems less and less likely every day. But that's another group of Black
that's
women
right.
affected by him.
Right. And a jury of their peers. Let's just really be clear.
Talk
These
about
are
it.
not judicial determinations. These are juries that are making this determination. But let's take the color out of it. There are goo gobs of cases involving
Is that a legal term?
non-Black people where there have been judgments, where there have been determinations where the juries have ruled against former President Donald Trump. So if the approach that whether it's the approach in this case or any other case, this is how he rolls when it comes to litigation.
Right.
This is what we know. Now, the only thing I will say, and being critical, is I don't think that the district attorney, and I don't even think of Nathan Wade because she brought him on,
Right.
exercised the best judgment as relates to the relationship.
Right.
Well,
Right.
nobody's perfect, and that's that. And for that, she received public scrutiny like very few people in life will receive. But guess what? That ship has sailed. It's done. You know, the thing about stuff being in the open,
once it comes to the light,
right? Well, it's in the open, and she's going back to the business, I believe, of prosecuting this case and doing what the citizens of Fulton County elected her to do.
So, as a lawyer, let me ask you this, because I'm not, obviously, I don't even play one on streaming platforms, but I'm fascinated.
I would love to.
I know, right? But I'm fascinated by the conversations that I was engaged in over the weekend. Friday, I was at an all-female luncheon honoring 10 incredible women. Saturday or Sunday, I was at a church event, and all they wanted to talk about was how she got herself involved with this man and allowed this to go the way that it did and involve him in her business life, in her legal practice. And did she have any girlfriends? And I was like, but what about the bigger picture? Well, if she had some real girlfriends, she would have, and then gone on. And
I don't see it that way.
I don't
see it that way. And I say that most respectfully of those many people feel that way. I don't see it that way for this reason. Anybody can make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Every day we engage in bad judgment.
Yeah.
I mean, and this was huge. This was a very high profile case. Fonnie Willis is probably, I don't know this, I haven't talked to her about this, but she probably has been living on an island isolated with U.S. Marshals because of the constant death threats to her life and to the life of her children because of this case.
Right.
This is probably an incredibly isolating experience. And so, look, he's getting out of his marriage. She's single. They hook up. And she's paying all of her. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why this. She's paying.
That's Connie calling, saying you all should have lunch sometime.
Right. She's paying her bills. He's paying his bills. I mean, I think there's a cultural dynamic to
it. For sure. And her daddy really brought that home, right?
There really is. But even if daddy hadn't spoken about it, there's a cultural dynamic to it. And there's a gender dynamic as well. Mm-hmm. If you are a professional woman, even if you're not a professional, when I say professional woman, I mean you've gone to graduate school. That's all that means. Right. Doesn't matter who you are. If you are an independent woman and carry yourself that way, when you're dating, whoever your significant other is, you may feel you need to pay part of it or have to pay your own way. There's nothing new about that concept. There's nothing new about folks carrying cash. None of this is a new type of thing.
Right.
Everybody does it differently. So I think for that, the country is divided. People who grew up Black or have a diverse background probably clearly understand that because there's a history. We couldn't go to banks traditionally. We couldn't deposit our money in banks traditionally. People didn't trust the banks, so they kept money everywhere else. We operated more on a cash basis. That's not unusual. But even if it were unusual, that's how they rolled. That's how Fani Willis rolled. And that's what she testified. Some people don't believe it. Whether you do or don't, well, the judge stood in judgment on all of this. He found that there was some impropriety, but he just couldn't, by the preponderance of the evidence, which was the standard, he said there wasn't enough evidence, because he had some choice words about how Fani Willis conducted herself.
Right, the impropriety and an odor of mendacity.
the appearance of impropriety, all of those things. Like I said, if you're a trial lawyer, sometimes judges are just not going to be happy with you. I'm not suggesting that what Fani Willis did, how she testified and all that is great or isn't great. That's not for me to judge. The judge is already determined. Just like when a jury speaks, I could say a whole bunch about it, but once the judge spoke, he spoke. May not agree with it, but he spoke. And so at the end of the day, where are we? She's going on with the case. She understood from the get-go, as we say, or from the inception, from the beginning, that she was going to be under scrutiny more than anyone else probably around her, and in ways that we haven't seen in a long time.
Right.
She understood that. She understands that. That's a very lonely place to be.
I can imagine. Yeah.
It's a very lonely place to be. So that's how I look at it. The judge had a lot of criticisms of her and of Nathan Wade, but he just felt that there was not, in Georgia and in most jurisdictions, to disqualify a prosecutor from a case. There's got to be a real conflict, not that he or she exercised bad judgment and all that kind of stuff, but a real conflict of interest. And there was conflicting evidence on that. It was a he said, she said.
Right.
It's got to be preponderance of the evidence. Just as in a civil case, just to give y'all an idea, in a civil case, usually it's you present the case and the plaintiff bears the burden by a preponderance of the evidence, by the greater weight of the evidence, versus clear and convincing or versus beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
Beyond a reasonable doubt is a standard, by the way, that the defendants are going to confront in this RICO case. Beyond a reasonable doubt, that's the highest standard. Then there's clear and convincing. That's a pretty high standard too. And then there's preponderance of the evidence, the greater weight of the evidence, which means I like to, and when I pick juries, this is what I tell them and stuff. I put my hands up like this and I have the scales of justice. I said, on the scales of justice, this is how you come in. I don't even know if my hands are even, but both parties come in the same way as the plaintiff, because I'm usually a plaintiff's lawyer. What I have to do is I have to just slightly tip those scales by the evidence, a preponderance of the evidence in favor of my client. And if I do that, I win. That's what preponderance of the evidence is. And this judge didn't feel that that was there. That's really significant, because if he had said clear and convincing, greater weight, that's such a high standard. Preponderance is not as high. But the point is, he wanted, I believe, to express his dismay and his disappointment. And Fani Willis came on in and hadn't even been called and sat right in the box. I laughed almost till I cried when I saw that. But she wanted to defend herself.
Sure.
I know what that is.
Yep.
I know what that is as a lawyer. And I'm going to share a story with you that is a matter of public record that pertains to me.
Okay.
And why you don't have to be. I've never worked in the public sector. I've always been on the private side, but I've most of my career, I've handled complex, high-tech, high-stakes litigation. Not all the cases, but some big, big cases. You all know I practice with Willie Gary. There's no higher stakes, he's still, I maintain, one of the baddest, most extraordinary trial lawyers of our time.
Right.
I had the pleasure of practicing with him for almost 15 years and occasionally do cases with him now. We had a case against Anheuser-Busch. There were a team of us 4 lawyers, and this was in 2001. We tried a case for 97 days.
Mm.
And early on in the case, and this was in Gainesville, Florida, which, by the way, is where I am today, ready to try another case. But in 2001, we discovered that the other side, Anheuser-Busch, had hired 16 private guest investigators to go through our trash.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so we discovered this. Now, me, myself, and I'm rather basic. I hear about stuff like that on TV, but
right.
Okay, this is civil case. This is not, but
criminal.
It's we represented Roger Maris's family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
the baseball player
who broke Babe Ruth's record.
Right.
That's who we represented in a beer distributorship case, a breach of contract case. Tried it for 97 days. When we came in possession of that information early in the trial, we brought it to the court's attention. Because last time I checked, I think there's some illegality, funkiness, or something.
Right.
We brought it to the court's attention, and the judge had a whole separate proceeding throughout our trial.
Hang on 1 second. I just want to, because I'm looking at the clock, and we've kept you over. No. Hang on 1 second. So we are talking to CK Hoffler, our friend, the famed attorney, and talking about the case in the Fulton County District in Georgia with District Attorney Fonnie Willis and Nathan Wade. CK is sharing with us a story, and we're going to continue this into our trending. Okay, so go ahead, CK.
So I'm gonna speed it up because I feel very passionate about this. So we won. We got a verdict of 100. So the judge had this proceeding with these, and I guess they killed the private investigator thing, and we had a special master during the trial. So it's like having two trials going on simultaneously. We won. We got $139 million verdict against Anheuser-Busch, their first distributorship case that they lost.
Mm-hmm.
The judge sent all of us on our side, 4 lawyers, I was the only woman in the courtroom trying the case, to the bar, the Florida Bar Association. Okay. And the Florida Bar brought a case against Willie Gary, myself, Madison McClellan, and Manny Socias. The 4 didn't bring a case against the defense lawyers.
Those that went through your trash and tried to find some dirt on you, nothing.
Tried to find some dirt. And that case, in a nutshell, was dismissed. Each of us had our own claims. I had one claim against me. Mr. Gary had a bunch. The goal was to take Willie Gary out. Because
right.
if you take out the head honcho,
if you cut him off at the head,
because we had another case against them. So to make a long story short, ultimately all of those charges were dropped, and there's a 17-page scathing opinion by the referee. So the charge against me was dropped early on. Mm-hmm. The charge against Mr. Gary and Madison McClellan went actually to like a trial and dismissed on what we call like a directed verdict. 17-page scathing opinion against the Florida Bar for allowing itself to be manipulated by Anheuser-Busch and a party, because Anheuser-Busch did all their pleadings. It was terrible, horrible. But 2 years of litigation. What I teach when I talk about ethics and professionals, I actually bring this up because you got to be big enough, strong enough to say, let me tell you what I experienced.
Right.
The reason why I raise that is for 2 years, that was really not a good space for any of us.
Of course.
You're being challenged, and it's very public because, of course, it was a very public trial. It was huge and all this kind of stuff. And the only person I was concerned about, really, the truth of the matter was my mother. I didn't care about all these people saying all this kind of stuff. That didn't bother me. I didn't care about the Florida Bar saying all this stuff. That didn't bother me. But my mother asked me early on, she said, did you do anything wrong? I said, oh, absolutely not. She said, well, then fight it. And that was it. And that was the end of that. And we did, and we prevailed. 2 years. But just think of all of the lawyers who are in a position like that, who don't have the resources that Willie Gary had, that our trial team had, where we could fight this.
Right.
And what happens to them is they might get disbarred or have some type of infraction. So, and all of that because we won. And the irony is we reported something that I thought was awfully raggedy. 97 days. But 97 days of trial, you know what your hair can look like 97 days as a black woman in Gainesville, Florida in the summer.
Okay.
So I say that because high stakes litigation, if you look like us and other people, it's going to be on. We can't take things for granted. With Fonnie Wilkes' experience, all of us experience on a microcosm, much less. What I went through is nothing like what she's going through. It really wasn't. But it wasn't pleasant. And so I say that that's where we are. And so I applaud Fonnie Wilkes for staying with it.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
you have to
Persistent.
be,
Yes.
we have all experienced being the other. Do you all know what
Mhm.
the other is? Being isolated,
Yep.
being alone.
By your own people, by the others, by the legal community, by and by and
By
by.
and by. It doesn't matter who the others are, the feeling is the same. But I tell you what, you threaten my children, I just don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
So I say all that to say, I get it. And when I do a legal analysis, I look at the merits of the case. And I call it how I see it. Again, not the best judgment. It gave the feeling that there was something wrong, impropriety. There's that. It gave, you just, it's kind of, it's messy. Now
Right.
we get to hear all this mess and stuff like that. But she did nothing illegal, and she did nothing to warrant disqualification.
Well,
So
before we close out, let me ask you this, because this story came down today. Attorneys for the former president have filed a new motion asking for an immediate review of the judge's order last week, of McAfee's order last week, effectively allowing the district attorney back on the case. What do you,
Stalling.
another delay,
well, what
delay.
He's
what they're gonna do is
stalling.
they're gonna appeal it. They issued these statements how it was a victory. There was no victory for them. It was
Right.
a huge victory for her.
Mm.
So they're going to appeal it. They've got to ask the court to give them the permission to appeal it. First thing. So that's number one. But the second thing is the judge is not going to reconsider his opinion. 23-page opinion. He's not. There's not going to be any reconsideration. Will they appeal it to the next level? More than likely. And that will continue, but I'm not sure that it will stall the case entirely, because she's going to continue with the prosecution.
And like you said, this is a trial in the state court. It cannot be, he cannot, get a pass from the president. He cannot get a pass from the governor. And this is a case that's going to go forward, whether he is president or not, in November of 2020.
But had she been disqualified, it may have been different.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to remember. So when I tell you, just for all the people who are very critical of her, I've been in rooms where there are people who don't know her, never met her, who said, we need to organize a group to send her letters to let her know we stand in solidarity with her. Mm-hmm. Black women, Black men, white men. So I say that because that's something you don't hear about. Right. The overall media presentation is, I've seen so many analyses of this. But it's just very simple. I never thought that she was going to get disqualified. I thought the whole thing was unfortunate, but this is what happens. And bad things happen to good people all the time, and bad things happen to people who don't deserve it. And we just always have to be on our P's and Q's. It's tiring sometimes.
And it is. And as I said in the newsletter, I don't care how many people say and how many times they said over the generations, we have overcome. We really haven't. Yeah. When you think about the standards to which we are held, and we can, and as my mama used to say, you just can't be like this little blonde white girl in your class, because we have to run faster, jump higher, and do things in a finer fashion.
And the last word I'll say on this is, people are saying, oh, well, this is putting a cloud over Fonnie Wilkes and her ability to prosecute. And that, no, ma'am. The reason why I say that is we got to remember she's going to be, if she is, I don't even know if she planned on picking the jury, but if she picks a jury, what you do is you desensitize, you talk to those jurors and ask how they feel about certain things.
Right.
And my impression, that's like maybe a 30-minute dialogue, because it's going to take days and days to pick a jury. Mm-hmm. What's going to take time is what Donald Trump's lawyers are going to do.
Oh,
because
goodness.
They're going to try to find out how the jurors feel about his multitude gobs of infractions
and the hush money trial and
all that. So there's always something, right. And you're always, Fonnie Wilkes has prosecuted the Atlanta teachers case, made her very unpopular. She's prosecuting the gang, the rappers. A lot of people feel some kind of way about her,
right?
And Rico and Fulton County. But the Fulton County citizens elected her to do what she's doing.
Yep.
So, that's what it is.
So, Coy, you want to go into this business?
I do. I mean, it is what it is. I get enough criticism every day, believe it or not, whether I'm looking for it or not. As soon as I share my opinion on politics, social justice, anything that's kind of challenging, the status quo or a lot of ideals that we have, especially as Black women, because I feel like there's just this agenda to always embarrass a Black woman who's in a position of power or who has an instance where she has to prove her case. There's always this extra thing that we have to do in order to be seen as valid. So I'm used to it. You know, people talk about, oh, you're a dancer, you're a stripper. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I see that's the only thing that you focus on
What
my
else you
page because
got?
there's a plethora of things I've done way outside of that. So, I mean, whatever. I got talked about as a stripper while I was a stripper in the club. So, whatever. I can do this. This ain't that bad. My
No,
problem is I like to talk back.
well, no, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. So I would say, you know, one thing, I went into law really. I didn't know that I practiced law. I went in because I felt it was a way of, is a tool of empowerment.
Mhm.
And I felt also that I wanted to speak for those who couldn't speak. Too
Right.
many people I knew that in my family or otherwise just had no voice, would
Right.
never have a voice. Do you know what and that meant something to me.
Mhm.
And so many of us have different reasons, but you know, you have to be able to live with the bumps in the road just in life, in this journey that we call life. And people are going to criticize you for a lot of things that you do, even when you don't even recognize that that people should criticize you.
Right.
Even you could be walking across the street. I don't know why she's walking so slowly. I mean, she didn't see the rest.
Yeah.
So that, you know, your hair all upside of head, different colors. What's she thinking about? Her legs look, you know, all kinds of things. So you have to live your truth.
Mhm.
You have to live and every day be able to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize, you know, Jesus wasn't, for those of us who believe, Jesus wasn't perfect.
Right.
So why are we held to a standard of perfection?
Holding others to that. Yeah.
To others, for those of us who are advocates on behalf of people who don't have a voice or whose rights have been somehow taken away from them, you know, you have to recognize that the path to justice is not always a clear line.
Yeah.
And it's not always clear. No matter how hard you work, no matter how good your intentions are. And things like this happen, and we have to stand up and take note. And that's what I hope people will do. Stand up and take note of what has happened.
Our friend Myra J is chiming in and speaking for us and saying thank you, CK, for all that you have said today. We really appreciate your time. I know I can't afford your hour, your build hour. So,
Always free for you. It's always free for you.
You know how I adore you, and I appreciate your wealth of knowledge and your passion. And I hope that we can do this again soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, my friend. Be well.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, that was a good class for you right there.
It was. If you
Future
didn't
lawyer
know
of
what was going
America.
on with Fonnie Willis, then you know now. Like,
Right. Right.
and I'm just really tired of a lot of the back and forth with the, well, she cheated the case and stuff like this. What this was really was just a way to kind of embarrass her and win the court of public opinion,
Right.
because there was nothing illegal that happened. So I'm just interested to see what the conversation is going to be now. What I have started to see online is people saying, oh, well, you know, they're going to find a way to cheat this like they did the last election. And that's why we're having this trial now. And don't worry, it's still going to be handled. And
Yeah. And that goes back to why people should, whatever you believe in, if you are pro or anti, one or the other. This is why you need to register, and this is why you need to vote, and not vote. Say I'm not gonna vote, because that does nothing. Absolutely, to stay home does nothing for you. In my opinion, but making a choice, stand up and say, this is who I believe in. This is the man and woman that I want to continue, or this is the man and whoever he's going to pick that I want to go back to the White House. And buckle up when that happens. That's all I can
right.
tell you.
And please stop telling me God is going to cast my vote.
Yeah,
I'm so tired of
I've
that.
got a cousin that believes that God is in this, and she is a Trump supporter. And saying that God is, has his hand on this, and I'm like, we have different gods. That's the only thing. I can't
God
tell.
gave free will. That's in the
Yeah,
Bible too.
exactly. That's exactly right. We've had that discussion. We've had, any number of discussions, and then it comes out, well, we can't be related. Well, yeah, we are. So, I don't know what to tell you.
We
You
just
know,
think different.
right? 23andMe says, yeah, you're related.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be very interesting, and I'm very excited about the role that you're going to play in getting out there and talking to people about how you see this and how we can make a difference when you think about young politicians like Max Frost, who was the youngest to win a congressional race from Florida and is now going back for his second term. Or you may be as old as Eddie Bernice Johnson was in her 80s when she left the Congress. But there's generations between them, and they all strove to make a difference. And I think that you can fault anybody for doing that.
Yes. And just wanted to tell everybody that I will be talking about my work with voter advocacy this week on Portia Bruner's show on Fox 5 Atlanta. It also airs on Fox Soul on
And we know that you'll
Wednesdays
also
at
be
1
posting
p.m.
that on your social media.
Yes, I will. So everybody go ahead and check out my page. Hopefully I get some good pictures in studio tomorrow to post that announcement, because the show will air, I believe, this Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck with that. Break a leg.
Thank you.
So that is we've gone into trending, and now it's time to talk about entertainment. Was I the only one that watched the NAACP Image Awards over the weekend?
I didn't even know that it was on, but shout out to Gail Bean, who won an award from
Yeah.
there. She is amazing. She's one of the actresses on Snowfall, and
Mm-hmm.
also one of the newest characters on P Valley, who I was a stunt double for during
Right.
the last season. So she looked beautiful. That's the
Yeah,
only
she
reason why I
really
knew
did.
that there was NAACP Image Awards.
She really did look beautiful, and it was a big night, and I think I might have been the only one. Queen Latifah hosted the award ceremony that aired live on BET and CBS, both Paramount properties. Entertainer Keke Palmer who has called herself the Boss on social media after her hit Big Boss album, opted for retro-inspired tailoring. She wore her hair slicked back in a clean bun and an oversized white dinner coat by Tom Ford with a white dress shirt, black bow tie, and a rose pin to her lapel, and wide leg black trousers. Wide legs are back. Because Usher tried the same thing. He had the same thing on his outfit, and Usher was gifted with a couple of awards over the night's process. Um, so I wasn't so crazy about. I've seen her in some really great outfits, and I wasn't so crazy about it. But I get, what she was trying to. She said it was an homage to old time entertainers like a Sammy Davis, and also an homage to like Julie Andrews in the old movie Victor Victoria. And so, she's out there showing, and she has reason to try to let people know she's the boss after her personal situation was given for all the world to see. And so I'm not mad at that. She told this to Terrence J about her homage to Sammy Davis and others. And as I mentioned, Usher, he won Entertainer of the Year, and he also won, I think was it the President's Award or the Chairman's Award? But he also was wearing something that was a little back from the 70s. He wore a black silk suit fit close around the body with his shirt unbuttoned to the chest. That was pretty 1970s like. The
Yeah.
pants featured a flare at the bottom, and actor John Boyega also wore a double-breasted pinstripe oversized suit with a matching trench coat. And as I mentioned early on, Usher won his first award, and that was the President's Award for his public service achievements through his New Look Foundation. And he thanked the strong women in his life, starting with his mom, which I thought was very nice. And he had to mention his bride, who he brought with him, because they're still newlyweds. So I guess he wanted to stay
How
on her
long can
good.
you do that?
Yeah, I know. What is the what's the limitation on that? And also amongst the other people that won, it was a big night for The Color Purple. Unfortunately, and I say this with all respect to Taraji P. Henson, who I thought did a great job on The Color Purple, but I really want I wanted Danielle Brooks to win because she has been slighted throughout this award season. And I thought if ever she was going to get the shine that she deserves, she would get it from our people. She did get her time to speak when The Color Purple won for Best Movie. And she spoke for the group and gave a beautiful speech. And so that was great. Fantasia also won for her role in The Color Purple. And it was a great night for them. Damson Idris, are you familiar with Damson Idris? I know you
Yes.
are. Yes, he won Best Actor in a Drama for his role in Snowfall, and Coleman Domingo took home Best Supporting Actress for The Color Purple as well. He also won Best Actor in a Motion Picture for his role in Rustin, which was just an incredible role. And New Edition was inducted into the NAACP Image Awards Hall of Fame. And this is bestowed to individuals who are viewed as pioneers in their respective fields and whose influence shaped their profession. And they were introduced by Donnie. I can't remember Donnie's last name. From NSYNC, and
There is
oh,
no Donnie in
no,
NSYNC.
I can't remember because I was seeing Justin, but his brother is also the. Thank you, Wahlberg. Thank you, Myra.
Mark
Donnie,
Wahlberg?
no, Donnie Wahlberg
Oh,
introduced them and said
Donnie.
if there were no members of if there were no New Edition, there would not have been in sync there. And he ran through the whole list of
They're from
boys
New
bands.
Kids on the Block.
Yeah. And so
Hmm.
he said there
Hmm.
would have been no NSYNC, there would have been no New Kids, there would have been, there would have been no,
Yeah, no
without New Edition.
112, no Blackstreet.
And I'm not sure if they got that far into it, but from his era, with New Edition starting, he did, and he was absolutely right. So I thought that was an interesting and a smart choice for him to introduce, and so that was really good. And those are the highlights. And I can't say some of the things that I said offline. So I'll just leave that to conversation with Myra J. So let us close out with our jewel. And talking about good health this week, maintaining good health is essential for leading a fulfilling and productive life. Got that?
Hmm.
And you're on your way. You're a sensible eater. You exercise, you roller skate, you do all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
maintaining a good health is essential for leading a fulfilling and productive life. There you go. Thanks, Coy. Thanks for the great story. And folks,
You're
continue
welcome.
to follow Coy and also check out her stories that she has coming up in this week's What You Need to Know newsletter. Go to SybilWilkes.com, give us your name and your email, and we'll have it in your email box every Monday through Friday morning, as we have said. And when you get it, open it. That's it. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good night. Aloha.